Here is how you make $100,000 a month. This is targeted towards agencies. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kyle Mao. I am the founder and CEO of Hire UA and Teamity, co-founder of Sell Olive. If you want to check out any of my companies, anything I've done, make sure you check out the descriptions in the link down below. And this, if you want to review it, is a brief timeline, of my entrepreneurial journey. I'm not a coach. I'm not a consultant. I don't have a course. I don't have a book. I don't have a coaching program to sell you. My entire goal with this channel and with these videos is to help people build their businesses up so that hopefully you then hire from one of my companies. It's that simple. Lots of free education. So this video, I'm going to be talking about how to get to $100,000 per month as fast as possible. This is with a focus on agencies. And we're gonna basically start at zero and talk about every milestone in between. A future detail will go into details about some of the smaller ins and outs, the little knickknacks, but this is a very overall macro concept, how to get a business up to $100,000 a month, primarily focused towards agencies. If you run a different model, you could of course take this into, adapt it to what you need, but mostly focused on agencies. So number one, stop overthinking it. So this is how most people work. Most people spend all this time working on their logo. They spend all this time working on their website. And they spend all this time deciding which state to put their LLC in or whatever else. And then they spend the rest of the time with stupid shit that doesn't actually move the business forward or doesn't actually start a business, instead of actually doing useful shit. This one little sliver, this is the actual useful stuff that actually will help you start a business or help you to grow the business. Most people are living in this area of hell instead of just focusing on this one little tiny thing. It's that simple. Next point, get it to market and test. So don't get too attached to your baby or your vision. Like, think of the show Shark Tank. And I actually, unfortunately, I used this analogy in the video I just shot beforehand, so you're going to hear it twice. But an entrepreneur will come out and they'll trottle out to the sharks and they'll say, oh, blah, 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 this is my product, this is my company. And of course, the first question, if they haven't actually answered it in their initial pitch, is how much revenue is your company making? And they'll say, oh, like $200,000. And, depending on the age of the business and what it is, they might say, oh, that's great. That was last month, right? And they say, no, that's forever. And then the sharks say, well, how long have you been in business again? They say, oh, like 10 years. And the sharks look at them and say, oh, so you're making like $20,000 a year. That's like way below minimum wage. Like, yeah. Like, are your sales going up? No. Are people interested in your product? No, not really. Have you ever stopped to think that maybe this isn't a good business? Oh. And this is like how half of it goes, it seems like. Don't get too attached to your baby and your vision. Sometimes you got to get it out there and you got to see how people respond. But if it sucks and nobody's interested, nobody's buying, then let it go. Throw it back to the sea, put the fish back in the water and find something else. There's always another fish to catch. So think of Shark Tank. Don't be like one of these people that has to go and present and you say, oh, yeah, I'm making $200,000 over the last 10 years. And I've put my entire life and ruined a marriage or two. My kids are traumatized because of this business. It's not worth it. The next point is that you get to do everything when the business starts. So I have a very, very useful meme here. This is the stages, the 4 different kinds of people. So we got people that have no job. They have all the time in the world. They don't get to travel and they don't have any money. Pretty simple, right? Here's most people at a 9-to-5 job. They have no time whatsoever because the 9-to-5 takes pretty much all of it. They only get to travel 2 weeks a year when they actually want to. And, in this case, in terms of this graph, travel's like freedom. Set your own schedule, travel when you want, wake up when you want, go to bed when you want, et cetera. So really on this chart, swap in travel for freedom. It'll make a lot more sense. Let's see. So obviously then I don't want to say they have a lot of money. Like the 9-to-5 has changed, so maybe they have some money, but you can see this money battery is pretty full here. Self-employed. This is most people. This is most business owners. Is they are not business owners. They are self-employed, meaning they've built themselves basically a new type of cubicle and job. They have no time because they're on call 24/7. They have to solve every problem in the business. Everything comes back to them, and they have no time, even though they are free. Sure, they can travel when they want. They have flexibility on when they sleep if they're allowed to. They have some flexibility on when they wake up, but at the end of the day, it all is coming back to them and they can't even take a vacation. And the guy at the 9 to 5 gets to take a vacation and actually unplug, whereas you, the self-employed person, you don't actually get to do that. So you don't really want to be in this situation. You don't want to be number 3 here, self-employed. Most people are going to be, though. Like at some point in your business journey, you're going to have to be this guy. But that's just how it is. And then, of course, hopefully the business is doing well. If you have no time, the business probably is doing well. So therefore, you do have money. And the last one, number 4, is the actual business owner. He or she does not have to have everything come to them. They do not have to solve every problem in the business. They get to focus on high leverage, big picture stuff. And so he has time. He gets to wake up when he wants. He doesn't have people calling him at all times of the night. He's got a team that handles that, client success managers, customer success managers, whatever you want to call it. He gets to travel whenever he wants, and there's money because he's hired the right people to do everything, and he's still collecting a check for himself. So this is the business owner. You want to be number 4 here. You don't want to be number 3. In fact, I would argue that number 3 is worse than number 2, because if you're number 3, you've basically built yourself into a prison. And you're probably working way more than the guy who's working the 9 to 5 job. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a second. The other cycle you really want to avoid is this one. And this is where business owners get into so much trouble because it's never ending. And I've seen people just stuck in this trap, this loop for years. So the first one is like lead gen. I have no business. I have no sales. I have no customers. I need to go scrounge up business, whether that's networking, whether that's ads, cold email, whatever it's going to be. You need to go scrounge up business. Then you start booking sales calls. Great. You've solved that problem. You've got prospects in the pipeline. Everything's coming in. And then though, if things have gone really well, your calendar's getting a little bit full. So step number 1, the lead gen starts to slip down a little bit. You're outreaching less prospects because the pipeline's full and you have a full calendar. So you start to slip a little bit. Oh no, I don't need to do any outreach today. Or oh no, I can pause the campaigns. Or I don't need to scrape new leads today because insert whatever excuse, you're busy. And then step 3 is where you really get into trouble. So fulfillment. Oh my God, I'm completely overwhelmed. I have all these lead gen to do. I have all these calls. And by the way, I've signed a bunch of deals. So now I actually need to fulfill them. And I need to do strategy for this client. This client's unhappy. I have to solve their problem. This client calls me at 3:00 in the morning because they're on the other side of the world and blah, 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 blah. Holy crap. I'm only ever going to catch up to all this if I'm able to pause lead gen. So then they pause lead gen and they say, why do I have no customers and clients? And this is it's an evil cycle. And a lot of people, though, are completely stuck in it. And I've been in this before where you're just you're doing all this, it's going well. You tip the boulder over, things are going great. And then you're you have to grind it to a halt because you're so busy with the actual client work. And this is not where you want to be. That's why it's the first thing you outsource. And obviously I'm going to plug my own business here and say, well, hire someone from Hire UA or Teamity so that we can actually help you get the person in there and get your time back. But this is common. Really, really, really common. And you can put this into other businesses too. It's not just an agency. Let's say you're a plumber or an electrician. Same thing. You start running ads on Facebook. You get all these people who want you to come plumb their toilets. You start, going out there, you start closing deals. And then it's oh my God, I'm completely overwhelmed, blah, blah, blah. I can't handle it. You need to hire another plumber because first thing you're going to do when you get overwhelmed is go turn off the lead gen. And then in a month, you're going to be saying, why do I have no clients and no customers? It all starts from number 1 again. So these graphs go together. I made this one down here. This one I found on the internet. You don't want to be the self-employed guy because the self-employed guy is going to be in this cycle constantly. It always happens this way. So you want to be this guy. Number 4, he's sitting there all cool. All right. Momentum. So again, macro concept, get your business, get your agency to $100,000 a month. It's going to be a front-loaded investment of time. You're going to be the guy in the first graph with no time. Might mean hustling and grinding. It might mean 16-hour days. It's fine as a means to an end, but you can't live there forever. You will just absolutely burn yourself to a crisp. You cannot live there. And sometimes, to go from say 100K to 200K, you might have to make another push. You might have to go and do the 16-hour days again. You might have to work really, really hard to get that boulder going. But you don't want to be staying there. You want that momentum to carry you forward. So this is another graph pulled off the internet from wherever this site is. This is like, startup graph. Oh God, what am I doing? Startup graph. Before the startup, initial enthusiasm dips down, the business faces challenges, minimal growth, low traction, yada, yada. You experiment, you pivot, starts working, it goes up and down. And then, this is inverted, but the momentum is like starting here. And then it runs and it goes and it goes and you hit scale. Once you have that momentum, do not let it go. It's like when you basically you put the pedal down at that point. So if you've got the momentum, you've got the rhythm, you want to pour gasoline on the fire. You don't want to turn the fire out. And a lot of business owners, they end up here. They've got all the momentum. It's in this fulfillment. They've got the pipeline full. The calendar is full. And then they get bottlenecked and they kill the momentum. And then they end up down here, having to go through the same shit and slog through it again. So when you have that momentum, you figure it out. If something is working and you can sign more clients and you can make more money, you can get more testimonials, you can get more case studies, the last thing you should do is then stop. No, the universe will punish you, I promise you. Like, the gods of business will look at you and say, you have disrespected our main gospel of momentum. And as a result, we are going to punish you and send you back here to slog through the swamp. Being an entrepreneur is easy. It's like riding a bike, except the bike is on fire. And that's like what this graph is. It's up, it's down, it's up and down. It's never just smooth sailing. That's not how business works. It's like riding a bike, except the bike is on fire, you're on fire, everything is on fire. Key point, if everything is going well, the snowball effect kicks in. Your success is then less about elbow grease and more about pulling big levers, really. So how do you get out of this evil cycle? The evil cycle of lead gen, sales, fulfillment, why do I have no clients, blah, blah, blah. First off, fulfillment is usually the easiest thing to start getting yourself out of. So in terms of, like, let's take my olive oil company, for example, Sell Olive. Fulfillment involves basically bottling it, labeling it, and shipping it. So as a business owner, you can say, like, obviously that's probably a low cost of labor to have someone else bottle oil into a bottle and put the heat seal on it and blah, blah, blah. That's cheap. That's a lot cheaper than, say, getting someone to come up with marketing campaigns or new angles to market the olive oil. So in this case, and that's also easier because it's not artistic. There's no like advertising to it. There's nothing I have to be thinking about. It's here's the process, do it. If someone can't do it, you fire them. It's that simple. Or you hire, a specialist. You hire an agency. Like we have we don't have a bottling facility. We're very small. So we have a facility. That's their business. They bottle stuff. We have a shipping, facility. That's their business, shipping stuff. So you don't have to hire somebody. You can outsource it to another company who specializes it, depending on what the business is. If you're running, let's say you're a brilliant email marketer though, like it might be hard to hire that. If the process is a little bit more linear, then it's easier to hire. So let's say, for example, it's not creative. You are doing lead gen for clients. So you have a process. You scrape leads. You email leads. You respond to leads. You put processes together. You train people on them, and you start getting that time back. So you got to have KPIs in mind because eventually you're going to level up. Eventually you want to stop being the self-employed guy and you want to be the business owner. So have KPIs in mind and try to document as much as possible. It will make your job so much easier later. There will be a time when you doing all this work is leaving money on the table. There's going to be a point where your time per hour is worth so much more than it costs to actually have it done that it's stupid to continue doing this. And I hear it all the time actually on sales calls. It's like, oh, how much money is your business making? what's your time worth per hour? And it's like, $300 an hour. So you don't want to outsource this task for $7? Like, it's crazy to me. So you have to let go. That's the biggest thing. You have to start letting go. If you don't, you're gonna be the guy with no time. You're gonna be the self-employed guy, just stressed out, no time. It is what it is. When it's time to hire, you don't want to hire too many people too soon. Like I've made this mistake at Hire UA. It's like things are going really good. Hire, more people, do more stuff. Every person you hire is also someone else you have to manage starting out. And then of course you start promoting people to manage them. But everything has a cost at the beginning and it becomes your time. And you have a battery, everything is going to be in one container, and things are going to be taken out of this. Hormozy put out a really good video the other day basically explaining this concept. But every part of your life, you've got one battery. And basically, your kids, your spouse, your family, your whatever else you have to do, personal bullshit always comes up. It all comes from that same battery. So every new hire who isn't reporting or who is reporting to you is going to put a drain on that battery. And I learned the hard way that Hire UA just absolutely exploded. And so it became like, oh my God, I need someone to handle all of these leads. I need someone to take these sales calls. I need people to recruit. I need people to talk to clients. And what I should have done is departmentalized everything. And that's what we have now. So we have fulfillment, which is recruiting. So recruiters and client success managers are all under that umbrella. And then we have marketing, and that includes the video production team. That includes, creatives, designers, etc. And then we've got the sales team, which is just lead gen and sales. Instead of me building out one department and making it really easy to then hand off the entire department, I hired people in 1 and 2 and 3. And before I knew it, I had, instead of having like one manager in that department who could get to me and ask questions if they couldn't solve the problem, instead I had like 15 people spread across those departments who were all coming to me because none of them had a manager, because I was still managing every department. So that was my mistake, and you don't want to be in that mistake. So you have to look at it and say, what can I outsource? If your process is very creative, you might have a hard time hiring the right fulfillment. Like if you do email marketing design for fashion brands, it's going to be very artistic, very creative. There's going to be certain guidelines. It might be hard to find a designer or an editor or whatever it's going to be to actually, execute your vision. You might have to really search, which is fine. But if it's something more simple, like lead gen, scraping leads, emailing leads, responding to leads with templates, that's a lot easier. So it all depends on what your business and what your agency is, but you have to build, it's so much better just to build out one thing and hand it off completely than to still have everything where everybody can get to you, because that just becomes a complete shit show. Leads me to my next point. Focus on one key hire. Like one key hire that's going to match your needs. So if you have a bunch of stupid tasks and admin work that always need to be done, get a virtual assistant. If you're spending all day talking to clients and taking meetings because they have questions, get a client success manager. Someone needs to do the things that are really, really difficult. And I have a very good video about what to delegate. So go watch that. I'll link it below. And basically what you want to do is go through and say, hey, this is what I like doing. This is what I hate doing. This is low leverage. This is high leverage. And you want to basically have a quadrant of 4 things, and you want to be living in high leverage and you like doing. That's a perfect world. It's not always so simple, but that's how it should be. Don't expect someone to be a genius. Next point. And do 162 different things. It doesn't work like that. Like you, as a business owner, you're going to know every little thing in your business, how to do this, how to do that. Someone is not going to come in and know this. And someone is likely not going to have the problem-solving capabilities. That is you, as the entrepreneur. You have to solve the hardest problems. That is why you own the business. That's why it's your name on the door. And that's why you make the biggest salaries, because you have the brain to solve this. I'm not saying that people on your team aren't really smart and don't have the ability to solve problems, but starting out, it's going to be you. You have to put out the fires. The people that you're going to be hiring at the start are simply going to be executing the processes and the standards that you have built in. They are not going to be necessarily solving the big picture problems. You got to accept that someone is not as good as you. And eventually you start to realize that, oh, I'm actually, like, you want to be the dumbest person in your company, ideally. And I've realized that. I'm like, all the people I hired to do these jobs they're way better at it than I could be. Like, I could still do all of these, but they're better. And that's ultimately where you want to be. So drop the ego. Starting out, no, someone's not going to be as good as you. Plain and simple. It's just not how it's going to be. But you can train them. And if you have the right people, they'll start, coming up with things on their own. So a good example of this is I worked at a company called Hitachi Data Systems. I would get calls when data centers were down. And it was honestly stuff like, Chevron's gas station terminals are not processing in this state. Or Wells Fargo, their ATMs are completely down in Florida. Stuff like that. Those are the calls I would get. So naturally, my crisis management is a lot higher than like the client success managers on my team. But they're getting better and they can solve all the problems, but I have to nurture, I have to coach, I have to train them. But I can't, they didn't work that job at Hitachi. So I can't expect them to understand what's in my head with this and how I come to these solutions. Instead, I do my best to coach them and train them, and I don't let them just come to me and say, here's the problem. If they come with a problem, they better have a solution, an idea. And then I coach that based off of what they come up with. So again, accept that someone is not as good as you, but they can become better than you. And if you hire the right people, they will over time. And another example of this, though, is those client success managers. I got 2 of them, Sophia and Daria. They're both wonderful. They've built like automations and stuff with the contracts that I didn't know how to do. They're like, oh, we want to make our workflow easier. So we're going to find a way to automate these contracts and integrate it with the CRM. And it was just like, oh, I never even thought of that. So that's what I mean. Like, people will do a better job. If you hire the right people, they're going to try to make their jobs easier and better. And then they build processes and systems that make the company better. And you win because you didn't do any of it. You trade in money for more time. And what you eventually want is time. More numbers, more people, more problems. So you'll probably start looking to hire, this is a video about getting to 100K a month. You're probably going to start looking to hire 20 to 25K, depending on how much your service is. That could be, say, 5 clients at 3 to 6K a month, like you're getting up to that mark. And you start saying, oh, I might need some help to get to that next level. And I hear the armchair experts saying, oh, Mr. Solopreneur makes 100K a month by himself. Like, that is a different industry. So coaching and consulting, whatever you want to call it, being a solopreneur, that's like they create content and it gets distributed. So they can have one editor and one VA who does all of that, and they just make the content. But the number of people who make a real living at that is so damn small and compared to everyone trying. So everybody's trying to make content. Everyone's trying to build a brand. But the amount of people that are actually making, say, a 6-figure salary, much less the people that are making millions, is not... It's so tiny. So don't take Mr. Solopreneur, who's had a brand for the last 20 years, as gospel on this. It is going to be hard to scale a lot of businesses, especially service-based, past this number without some help. And that leads me to my next point, which is every hire is potential risk. It costs about 1/3 of someone's salary. So let's say you hire the wrong person. Say you're paying them $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year. You get that wrong and fire them after, say, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, it's going to cost you like 1/3 of that in time, training costs, resources, as well as the opportunity cost of not having the right person. So that $3,000 a month hire, $36,000 a year, even though they only worked for you for 6 weeks, it's going to basically cost you $12,000. So you really want to try to have the right person. I want to give an example. One of my client success managers, Daria. So when I hired her, I actually did not hire her at first. I passed on her. I thought she was a little too young, a little too fiery maybe. And I feel like in a way, actually, I saw some of myself in her, and that kind of worried me. I didn't really know how to manage and how to handle that because I was like the same age as her when I got that job at Hitachi. And this was going to be a high pressure job of dealing with a lot of clients, a lot of people. And I was just like, oh, I think she's too young. And we passed on her. We hired somebody else. And that person did not work out past the first, it was like 10 days basically. And it was not going to work out. And so I went back to Daria and I, had to basically eat shit. And I said, hey, I think I've made a mistake. And if you're willing to look past this and you can work with me and work with the team and forgive this, then I would like to offer you the job. And to her credit, she said, I need a day to think. I'll let you know. And I respected that. That was totally fair. And she accepted it, thankfully. Thank God she accepted it, man. She's been so good. But yeah, that was the story is I screwed it up and I knew I'd made the mistake and I knew that I didn't give her the proper chance. And it was because I was scared in a way. I didn't really know how to manage that energy that she seemed to have. And the thing is, I didn't even give her a second interview. She was one of the first interviews I had. And then we waited 2 weeks. And then the one we ultimately hired was 2 weeks later. And I was comparing between her name was Yulia, I think. Yeah, Yulia. And then Daria. And I was so stupid. I didn't even give Daria a second interview. So I was comparing Yulia, who I interviewed today and was impressed with, versus Daria from 2 weeks ago. And on top of that, Daria, it had a bunch of bad ones in between. So I was like, Daria, 6 crappy ones, and then Yulia. And I said, Yulia, instead of giving Daria another chance. And that was so stupid of me. Daria still makes fun of me about this 2 years later almost, but that's okay. My next story is it's always better to promote from within. So if you say hire someone really good, entry level A player, but they're good, they're sharp, they get it all. Example, Valentina. Here was her timeline. Hired her in August of 2022. Hired her as a basic VA, basic tasks, basic help, nothing major. October 22, company started to really grow, got busy, and I said, hey, we need help recruiting. Like, can you start to learn this? And she did very good. By February, like 4 months later, I promoted her to overseeing the other recruiters. Gave her the title of operations manager. In reality, it was probably more like head of recruiting at that time, but pretty much said, hey, you're doing so good at this, I want you to oversee everybody else. And then when we hired the next recruiter, she hired them and trained them. And then the one after that and the one after that. So I talked about that earlier. Instead of building out multiple departments where you were still like the end point for all of them, do what I did with this. This is the one I didn't screw up. Was I said, Valentina, you're doing really good with recruiting. You seem to get everything. So you hire the next recruiter and you train them. I don't want anything to do with it. And I haven't since. I don't even interview the recruiters anymore before they get hired. We're well past that. I don't think I've done that for like a year. She interviews them, she finds them, and then she has the other CSMs like Daria or Sophia, who's our other senior client success manager, and my assistant Yana. She has them interview them, and then they make a call. And then finally, this year, I started giving away those other departments, which I should have done better from the start, but I said, okay, marketing, you're now going to be in charge of this. So now that role is transitioning to everything else. If you do everything properly with hiring, this initial problem is no longer a problem because you have somebody then in fulfillment who says, we need more help, or who jumps on it and helps out if needed. And then you don't have to stop the lead gen. And you don't have to stop taking the calls. And you're never saying I'm overwhelmed from the fulfillment bottleneck. And then you never end up again here at number 4. Why do I have no clients and no customers? It's because you stopped lead gen and you stopped sales. It's that simple. You take away fulfillment and you never turn off lead gen and sales. And then the only bottleneck is, can you fulfill that many people? And if you've done a good job with fulfillment hiring, you just hire more people and you repeat the process. It's that simple. Once you're out of number 3, it's gone, and you have no excuse not to spend all your time on 1 and 2. Next, macro point, how to grow a business to $100,000 a month. Change is constant. That's it. That's the only constant in the business world. You know, like I said earlier, everything's always on fire. So the only change, or only constant, is change. I should have renamed this title here, actually. It should be only constant is change. Anyways, maybe a social media algorithm changes everything. Like we've had this happen multiple times. Like Twitter ads one day went from like $50 a call to like 500, just absolutely blew up, and they're completely useless now. So yeah, a year ago, like I said, $50, $70 a call, run ads on Twitter. Now it's like 1 cent a click. It's just nothing but spam bots clicking the links. Like it drives tons and tons of traffic, but absolutely no calls. Silly. Maybe your product is like a fidget spinner, viral fad, and it's gone. No one wants it anymore. Maybe that happens. Maybe AI has made your service or your product or your offer like completely irrelevant. Like, or if you're like someone who works a job, maybe it's made your job irrelevant. Like that's happened. We've lost people at Hire UA that we've had placed because someone outsourced it to AI instead. Like it's going to happen. No matter what, the only rule is just be flexible enough to pivot at whatever curveballs get thrown at you, because they're going to get thrown at you. Like there's no way around it. It's stop trying to avoid the problems and the road bumps and the curveballs and embrace them. It is simply part of how it works. Final point here. Don't build a prison. So which of these 2 options sounds better? Option number 1, a job that pays you $100,000 a year and you get to work at 9 a.m., leave at 5 p.m., you don't really have too many stress. You don't have too many problems. You just show up. There's not really any risk. You get 2 weeks of vacation. Isn't a lot, but nobody bothers you on that vacation. That's all just very simple. Or option number 2, a job that pays you $100,000 a year, but you work from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Your phone is always on, always going off. You get calls in the middle of the night, in the middle of the weekend. Everything depends on you. And while you can take vacation whenever you want, by the time the wheel's up, you've already got your laptop out answering emails. One of these 2 things is a job, and the other one is most business owners. That's the reality. This is how it is. A lot of business owners trade working an 8-hour day for a 16-hour day with 10,000 times more stress, responsibility, and the never-ending doom that it's all going to fall in on you. It's exactly where you don't want to be. It's basically a new cubicle jail. Like, you want to leave the 9 to 5 because you don't want to work in a cubicle under lights anymore. Well, guess what? Now you're in a different kind of jail. And it's 16 hours a day and it's a lot more stressful. So you don't want that to be you. And a lot of business owners, they just get there. Like, once you've tasted success, people forget the reason. Like, they normalize then working 16-hour days. And some people like truly want to do that. But I think almost everybody doesn't actually want to do the 16-hour days who has to do them. So if you're like, no millionaire or billionaire or a successful business owner wants to spend 16 hours a day putting out fires with clients or customers or dealing with bullshit. They don't. If they love their business and they love what they're doing, they breathe it. Like, I breathe my business every day. I wake up thinking about it. I go to bed thinking about it. And it's because I breathe it every day. And I might work a lot of hours, but the reality is I'm sitting here making this video to help other business owners. This doesn't feel like work to me. So I might put in a lot of hours, but it's enjoyment. I take something from it. But a lot of business owners have built this just prison, this box that they're in, where they're doing 16 hours a day of stuff they don't want to do. And that's really where you don't want to be, because then you burn out and then you want to sell the business. You want to just shut it down. That's not the way that you want to do things. The reason most people start their business is to enjoy the financial security and the freedom of it. If it's year 5 and you're still working 20 hours a day, you've built yourself a prison cell, not a business. I would say this tends to kick in around like $50K a month, because at like 20 to 25K, it's you hire one person, they're able to take some things off your plate. But at 50, like at that point, you're probably servicing 10 clients, and that then is starting to get more difficult. It's getting to be, this one has a problem. Now we have to replace this one. They churned, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't have that help, it's really, really hard to actually reach that next level. This isn't gospel, but this is a good rule of thumb, I think. So this is how, from a macro perspective, and again, we're gonna have a video in the future of breaking down all this in a lot more detail, but this is like the macro steps. This is the overarching principles that will allow most agencies to get to a 6 figures a month run rate. Stop overthinking it, get it to market and test, realize that you have to do everything, avoid the cycle of lead gen, sales, fulfillment. Why do I have no lead gen? Momentum, get out of that cycle. More numbers, more people, more problems. Change is constant, and don't build a prison. These will serve you well. If you follow all these in a basic level, as I've laid out in this video, more than likely you can get your business to reach that next level. But there's a lot more that goes into it. And obviously every business, every individual, very different, very unique. Everyone's going to have their own nuances to this, but this is a good rule of thumb. In any case, if you're a business owner looking to hire, I'll drop a link to this document if you want to read it, and book a call just around the calendar. So if you're interested in hiring, you need some help. If you're a business owner at that 50K a month mark, or a business owner at that 25K a month mark, book some time. Be glad to help you out for any position you need. Save 80% on payroll. I hope this was helpful. This took me a long time to learn, to be honest. And as I've said before, this timeline looks great. It looks like, oh yeah, this guy's just a genius. It ignores all the crap that happened in the middle. There's 7 things on here and each one of them had 70 problems before it reached that number. So that's just the reality of it. I hope this helps. The goal of this channel is really to help business owners educate themselves, and especially in terms of like hiring and building the team and actually building a business that you enjoy instead of one that you hate. So hope you got some value from the video. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel if you did, and I'll see you next time.